Because it is.
Why then is the Arctic ice shelf melting? Why are the sea levels rising? Why are the hottest temperatures in the last decade essentially the hottest temperatures that we've seen on record?
It does seem like climate change is happening faster than we thought in some ways. It seems societally that maybe we're more vulnerable than we thought.
The entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
So in case you're keeping track at home, low temperatures are proof of global warming. So are high temperatures, heat waves. Also hurricanes are, but droughts are too. So hot or cold, wet or dry, all of it is proof that human activity is making the climate hotter. The question is there any weather phenomenon that doesn't prove global warming? Josh Fox follows us carefully. He's a documentary director and environmental activist, and he joins us. Josh, thanks for coming on.
Tucker, it's great to be on again with you.
Thank you.
You said everything that you just said was true. That was amazing. You had like a whole run there.
Let me just say at the outset, I'm not here to debate you. I don't really know what my position is. I'm open-minded because I believe in science, and I think that evidence ought to lead to conclusion, not the other way around.
That's miraculous.
But why wouldn't I be a little bit confused if people say that hot temperatures are a sign of global warming? Now they're saying cold temperatures are, wet conditions are, but also dry conditions. How can that all be true?
Again, you're not really stating it correctly. I think what people are saying about the bomb cyclone is it is a similar weather event to a hurricane, which is true. What climate change does as a result of warming is it increases the extreme weather events, right? Extreme cold, extreme hot. But in this case, we're talking about extreme storms, right? Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Harvey. These were unprecedented and incredibly disastrous events in terms of the climate, and this bomb cyclone is very similar. Now, in the scientific terms, what this means...
Hold on, just to stop. And I just want to make sure I have this right. And I want to make it clear, you're not a scientist, so be sure not to patronize me. Just give me a straight answer. I was told for the last 15 years that global warming, its main result was higher temperatures. So can you see why I'd be confused?
We are seeing higher temperatures.
So, but if this turns out to be an unusually cold year, and it looks like it may, how can that
it's
also
cold in
be...
New York. It's cold in New York. You're in New York. I'm in Louisiana. And in fact, yesterday I was in St. Thomas, where it was 80 degrees. And that's the point. The hurricanes and the cyclones start with a warming Atlantic. When the Atlantic Ocean is warmer, it evaporates more water into the air. When you have more water in the air, more water comes down. So you saw this huge deluge with Harvey. You saw all of this wind and rain with Irma and Maria, and now you're seeing huge amounts of snow because of the warming temperature in the Caribbean.
Wait, but I'm
right?
confused.
You know that
So
these
we're
storms
seeing
come
a lot
up
of
from Florida, right? We know that, right?
But it was
Tucker?
just, I'm not sure what we know. Because
I'm explaining
was,
to you the
hold on,
science. Now, you asked me about science, right? So I'm explaining to you the science.
I don't know how much you know about science, and I know that I don't know much about science.
I have a map right here of the whole world temperatures, right? Now, you'll see the blue right there. That's North America. That means it's colder than average. But if you look at the rest of the planet, it's warmer than average. That means when you talk about global warming, you look at the entire globe.
Okay,
not just New York City. But it's like, you can say, oh, I live in New York City, so it's colder in New York City. That's not an argument. That's why we keep records. That's why the Farmer's Almanac keeps track.
I get it, but let me just ask you a question. You're filibustering because I think you're fearful of answering a straightforward question. And so here's one. So it was 4 years ago, the New York Times, in a piece that I remember reading, predicted, and I'm quoting, the death of snow because of global warming. Global warming was going to end snow in the United States. Then, 3 years later, we had record snows. That was last winter, and they said another effect of global warming. And during that same period, they wrote a piece saying that the overabundance of ice in Antarctica was a sign of global warming. And then 3 years later, they say a lack of ice is a result of global warming.
First of all, what you're saying is absolutely not true.
Well, it is true. I can cite it right here.
It's not true, Tucker. It's not true. And listen, let me tell you something.
Well, what's not true about it?
Can I tell you the reason why I care about this?
No. I want to get specific. I don't want to get general.
I just spent the entire Christmas holiday on St. Thomas, which is a town that was an island that was completely completely ravaged by Hurricane Maria and Irma. There are people who have no electricity. There are people who have no home. There are people who lost loved ones.
Over
and the
my
reason
question.
why people care about
You're making a general
change
statement. I
is
want to be
because
very specific.
Your
And can you
question
just
is
respond to my
nonsensical,
specific
Tucker.
question?
Your question has no basis in science. You're saying, oh, well, we have one article here and one article there. What I'm trying to point to you are
the same people are making contradictory claims.
Global climate records. And the reason why I'm on your program right now is because over this last decade, I've been exploring fracking and exploring and investigating climate change. Why? Because I don't want people's children in harm's way. I don't want our military in harm's way.
Now you're making...
James Mattis,
what
the
you're
director
doing
of
is
defense
calling attention to your own moral virtue. You've departed science. I'm asking you specific questions.
In the Trump administration believes
all of you guys immediately go when asked a simple question, you go to, I'm a good person, I care.
Like I asked you the last time, do you understand the science behind climate change? Do you understand?
It's too frustrating. Thank you. Tried to get an answer. Couldn't.
Scientists have a new plan for how you can save the climate. Don't have children. Just stop right now. Don't even think about it. A new study from Lund University in Sweden says the single best way to cut your carbon footprint, assuming you want to, is simply to refuse to reproduce. Deleting some humans from existence, they say, saves far more carbon than, I don't know, being a vegetarian, riding a bike to work, not boarding an airplane. Josh Fox is the director of the anti-fracking documentary Gasland and the newly released film Awake, A Dream from Standing Rock. He's an environmental activist, and he joins us tonight. Josh, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here, Tucker.
So not having children, that's the message. It seems like a sort of a tough message to deliver.
I think that's a bit of a misrepresentation. I think the study was saying that governments are saying we should recycle, we should change our light bulbs, we should do all these sort of consumer habits, and this study was comparing those sort of very minimal efforts to curtail climate change with other things like not flying, being a vegetarian, not having a car, and yes, having fewer children. It didn't say don't have children. It said, you know, having fewer children and having family planning, which means you have your children maybe later in life, would be something that would reduce carbon emissions per family. That's what the study says.
You know, if you follow this to its logical conclusion, you wind up telling Africa not to have so many kids because all the countries with the highest birth rates are in Africa. Niger's 1, Mali's 2, Burkina Faso's in there. So basically, are you willing to say to Africa, hey, you have too many kids, there are too many African kids?
No, that's a very illogical conclusion because the study doesn't say African children are causing lots of carbon emissions. African children are actually causing very, very few carbon emissions. What is causing carbon emissions by and large are the countries of the first world, the countries of the West, China, India, Europe. Those are the countries that have skyrocketing carbon emissions which are causing the climate change problem. But I would agree with you. I think that the problem with saying things like, this is your individual responsibility, you must stop driving, you must have fewer kids, you must change your light bulbs, is crazy because there's no individual solution for climate change, right? There are ways that we can be more responsible citizens, absolutely. But what I would suggest is that that's like running into a burning inferno of a building with a thimble full of water, throwing it out the water and going, woo, I did something. That's the problem here. There's a con afoot, which is that individuals have to take on all this guilt and all this responsibility, when in fact it's governments and major corporations that are responsible for climate change. It's been very clear that there are just 100 companies, 100 companies are responsible for 71% of climate change emissions. It is those companies which should stop reproducing, not children. So I agree with your basic premise that this is a little bit out of whack.
Very quick things. So the only country to take this policy and enact it on a large scale is China, which limited reproduction to 1 child per family for decades. That's also the biggest polluter in the world. So,
well, but they didn't do that because of climate change. But,
well, they didn't, but
that's
the fact
misleading.
Is they...
Tucker, can I ask you a question? Do you understand the science on climate change? I mean, do you understand?
You ought to have fewer kids. I understand some of the science.
Do you understand the science on climate change? I mean, look, Tucker, science dictates everything that we do in our society. Science means that climate change is real. Science means that fracking pollutes groundwater. Science means that this television works, that this works, that cars work. Science presumably says that underneath your hair there's a brain behind those eyes. Of course, I haven't seen it. Science would tell us that there aren't a bunch of hamsters up there or a patch of straw.
I'm sorry.
I mean, although you're not really using your brain right now. What I am saying to you, Tucker, to make make these kinds of false arguments about what the scientists are doing.
It's hilarious. No, let me just say this. Just back up 1 second.
So, Tucker, I asked you a question. You haven't answered it. I asked you a question. I'm a journalist as well.
Science
do you understand what the science is telling us about climate change? Because this is what's very, very important. Well, I find it remarkable. I went out and talked to a lot of millennials. I talked to millennials about this question. I said, do you have an opinion about whether or not you should have children respective to climate change? And almost every one of them said, yes, I worry about this enormously. I worry about the future that my children will have.
Okay,
I mean, look, most Americans, and I've gone all across America to talk about extractive industry.
Right. You're not winning anything over with this.
I do think it's important that people care about the future for their children. I really do, Tucker.
Everybody cares about the future for their children. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Would you deny that our society is based on science? Medicine is based on science. Media is based on science. All the things that we have to say are based on science. What the science is telling us is that climate change is going to create a situation which is very, very dangerous and difficult for civilization to endure. Climate change will raise sea levels to the point to which it swamps all of our major cities.
Can I ask you a question, or are you going to continue with this stuff? Let me just ask you a really simple question. When you
you still haven't answered my question to you, which is, do you understand
behind climate change? I guess not all of it. I'm not a scientist. No, I don't fully understand it.
So do you understand
I know that
what
you
the
don't
science
either.
is
I don't
telling
know that
us about
anybody
climate
fully
change?
does.
Do you understand how dire it is? I find it absolutely
because
amazing.
You're too obnoxious to talk to, unless you just answer one simple question.
Okay, hold on, stop.
Let me just ask you a question, okay?
Ask the question.
You're giving me these like general bromides about climate change.
Go ahead, say what you're saying.
When you say that climate change is destroying the world and it's the thing that we should worry about most, and then you say simultaneously it's not really dependent upon our individual choices, aren't you giving a pass to some of the big individual polluters? If I say I really care about climate change and I fly
choices
around,
that matter. It's group actions that matter.
It doesn't matter if you fly in a private
millennials,
plane.
who are by and large the people who are
ever?
of childbearing age right now. Now you're not letting me talk, so I'm just going to talk. Millennials who are of childbearing age right now, our number one issue is climate change, because they know that they're going to inherit an incredibly unstable world. The United Nations predicts that we will have 1 billion
This is actually too stupid. I'm going to bring this to a close. I'd love to have a conversation with you, but you're like you're moralizing like every Hollywood
profound
dopey guy invoking science to like get
Tucker, I'm just trying to answer your question. Listen, I really want to be civil with you because I'm
being civil. I'm just too frustrated
your audience.
because. All right.
No.
I appreciate
Listen, Tucker,
it. Thank you.